Welcome to Humanity Rising Tales. Please subscribe to my channel. Your one click keeps this universe alive. Folded hands. It is one of the universe's quiet ironies that the most profound connections rarely arrive gently. They come disguised as disasters, shattering the steady rhythm of ordinary life like a stone hurled through stained glass. For Elliot Reeves, the catastrophe did not begin with an explosion. It began with the death rattle of a coffee maker. The machine had been screaming like a wounded animal for 3 weeks. A fitting soundtrack for Station Meridian. The outpost hung in orbit around the gas giant Kepler, a place defined by function rather than beauty-tight corridors, recycled copper air, and the constant skull-deep hum of quantum processors. Elliot's world was Lab 3. It was a lonely place, dominated by the translation matrix, a towering column of crystalline processors designed to solve an impossible problem. Humanity's first contact with a faster-than-light species, the Ari, had produced no simple lexicon. Instead, they had given humanity a mathematical poem, a language built from spatial relationships and probability curves that made human grammar look like finger painting. Elliot was knee-deep in subharmonic parsing when reality broke. The temperature dropped instantly, frost crawling across his coffee cup. The matrix didn't malfunction, it screamed. A sound like tearing metal vibrated through his bones. The center of the lab folded inward, geometry twisting into shapes the human brain was not meant to understand. Then, with the sound of a door slamming somewhere very far away, the chaos collapsed. In the wreckage stood a woman made of starlight. She had elongated ears sweeping back into elegant 15-centimeter points, and skin that shimmered faintly like dawn through mist. "Oh," Elliot whispered to the stunned silence. "That's not good." She was alive. Medical drones swarmed as Commander Affer barked orders over panicked comms. When the woman woke, confusion radiated from her in waves. She spoke in tones like wind chimes, sounds the translator mangled into half-formed coordinates. That moment became known simply as the incident. They named her Lyria, a compromise. A human attempt to render a name that sounded like harpstrings played during advanced calculus, contrary to every expectation. Lyria was not unknowable. She was brutally, disarmingly logical. Lab 3 became a stage for cultural collision. She dissected human habits with surgical precision, openly mocking Earth's measurement systems. "Celsius, Fahrenheit, feet, meters," she said one morning, ears twitching in amusement. "You split the atom, yet cannot agree on temperature. Why does your species hate consistency?" "We're working on it," Elliot said, smiling despite himself. Their days fell into rhythm. She stumbled over English homophones, nearly choking on the idea that a military colonel and a corn kernel shared pronunciation. Elliot, meanwhile, wrestled with Athari grammar that shifted based on quantum probability. They debated handshakes over cafeteria stew. She called human greetings biochemically inefficient. He insisted they were polite. They bridged light years, one conversation at a time. But it was the quiet moments that mattered most. On the observation deck, silhouetted against the amber fury of Kepler's storms, Lyria's scientific composure fractured. She spoke of floating platforms in the clouds of her homeworld, her longing so raw it made the recycled air feel heavy. Elliot realized then she wasn't a puzzle. She was the most vivid anomaly the station had ever known. She thanked him for treating her like a person, not a problem. And in that shared silence, gravity subtly changed. Then came the Tuesday of the data corruption. A critical file on temporal verbs dissolved into static, erasing days of work. Elliot stared at the screen, hollow with despair, until Lyria, powered by a growing tolerance for his terrible coffee, stepped in. Her eidetic memory reconstructed the work effortlessly, but she paused. "We missed a form," she said, leaning close enough that he smelled ozone and rain. the future conditional. It's for outcomes that carry emotional weight, the space between hope and intention. When you shape your choices around desire, even if it's impossible. It was grammar that felt dangerously like a lesson in the heart. They rebuilt the file together, unaware. The clock was running out. The interruption was swift and bureaucratic. Commander Offer announced a breakthrough. The fold mechanics were solved. Lyria could go home in 2 weeks. Objectively good news. Landed between them like a wall. For 5 days, they practiced avoidance, professional, careful, painful. Silence, pressurized by a deadline. Eventually explodes. Lyria confronted him in the lab. Elliot broke first. "I'm afraid I'm being selfish," he admitted. "I don't want you to stay because you're useful. I want you to stay because losing you feels like losing something I didn't know I needed." She studied him, then spoke quietly. She had been offered a choice to remain for cultural exchange, but she needed clarity. She had heard him whisper a human word. "Love, in a Thari culture," she said, her fingers threading through his. "We do not do casual. We bind our paths until the stars go dark. I need to know if you meant it." "I meant it," Elliot said, "even though it's a terrible idea." Her ears tilted sheepishly. The accident, she confessed, hadn't been cosmic fate. It was her fault, an unstable navigation algorithm she'd been too proud to admit was flawed. She hadn't been chosen by the universe. She'd crashed into his life. Elliot laughed. Free and breathless, she fit right in. Lyria chose to stay. She chose bad coffee, chaotic measurements, and the man who made the universe feel less empty. Lab 3 stopped being a place for decoding languages. It became the birthplace of a new one, spoken only by 2 people who learned that the best things in life are never planned.